All right, we're green and we're good to go. Matt, thanks for coming
Yeah.
out. Brought you out here. I heard it was Colorado beef.
Yes, it's one of those things the family's got to eat. So no better place to come to get some beef is to come out here and get it. So
All
yeah,
right, and that's saying something about Colorado beef. You being from
right.
Omaha, which I think they're kind of known for their
Yeah,
meat.
absolutely. We'll bypass that and come out and do business as we get the opportunity to get some meat.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Matt, thanks a lot for hopping on a podcast. It is kind of ironic with a Pivot Bio banner behind you. Sorry, it's the only one I got now, but I guess you'll have to send me one for BW Fusion, the company you're with now. And yeah, we've been trialing BW Fusion products now for a couple years, and definitely excited about some of the products you guys have developed, and still kind of in that testing phase. But hoping with 3 years at data to kind of move out of that and really figure out the products that fit best for our area. Um, I guess starting off like BW Fusion, I don't think, out west here, there's a whole lot of exposure to BW Fusion, maybe a little bit on social media. But yeah, why don't you tell me a little bit about BW Fusion?
Yeah, so BW Fusion, I mean, a lot of people, to your point, may not know about us in the piece, but we've been in this agricultural space and new crop nutrition space for 20 plus years. And it really goes back to building science based off of what we found with oil remediation and an opportunity to break down bonds within the oil remediation space, and saying, if we can do those things in order in that space, can we put biology into the soil to begin to activate certain things that maybe are there, but also to uh, enhance what's happening in that soil and make that soil work more and be more lively and cycle through products or cycle through elements that are needed for growing, gives us an opportunity to say, can we do that in a better space? And over that 20-year period, we found that the reality is our soils in a lot of cases have become chemically dependent, and by no fault of any farmer or own, my own farm in Iowa is the same way. I started down this journey roughly 8 years ago in my home farm of saying there's got to be a way to do this a little bit better, and understanding what's happening in our soils and how that's feeding our plant and how our plant feeds the soil. There's a whole cyclical nature that we want to work in harmony versus work against in that space. Not saying that synthetic fertilizer, doesn't have a positive impact on it, but it really is. How is it that our soil can do more for us than what we really thought that it could?
Mm-hmm. I That's really interesting with the oil remediation topic you brought up there. You really don't hear a lot about that, or at least I haven't. Um, in a super saturated biological market right now, from over 1,000 companies, uh, and a lot of different um, you know inconsistency in product performance with biologicals is one of the reasons, and I've said it before in this podcast. That's one of the reasons why I think there is some hesitancy, to really jump into this biological space. Guys are just comfortable using synthetic fertilizers, but I think that oil remediation is a pretty cool story that I think it helps farmers understand that, hey, this invisible, or not invisible but microscopic organism that we're telling you is working for you. I mean, that's a really good way to prove it too. So I What exactly is the biology doing?
Yeah, and when we start to think about there's different teams of biology, and from a biological company landscape, you're very familiar with the different companies that you've worked with and trialed. But we, from a BW standpoint, we recognize that there are impacts of in the soil that we can have with both putting different teams of biology together that allow for the opportunity in our soils to feed what's there, but also to multiply and produce beneficial components that help feed our crop as well. So when we look at it, everything has to work in concert. And I think that there are products on the marketplace today that really bring to light the ability to do both. But then there's products on the marketplace that seem one dimensional that in order for things to work from a biology standpoint, all things have to go right, and the universe has to come together and give correct growing conditions and environmental conditions and management conditions that limit a biology from working. And so when we put multiple teams together, we mitigate some risk in the opportunity there that we recognize we're going to have a heavy lift by maybe one of those teams of biologies, and we're going to have a mediocre lift in the other hand from some of the other teams of biologies. But by putting both of them there, we enhance both sets and give a grower an opportunity to build confidence and understanding that there are there are components of their soil that they've analyzed through soil test samples and soil tests over the years, but they've not brought to light the three-dimensional component of their soil. They've looked at it from a chemistry standpoint, or they've looked at it through a physical property standpoint, but they haven't really accessed the biological side of that soil. And so when we look at soil samples, but also when we look at biology and biologicals from a product standpoint, we begin to open up a new universe for growers to really begin to see what's happening in their soils. And what's happening in Colorado is wildly different than what's happening in the I-states. And we get different returns based on what's happening in all of those soils. And you and I have talked about this ad nauseum over the years. It was, we've done really good to dial in here locally of how to utilize the soil that's in front of us and how to get the most out of it, but also how to that products built for the West are different than products built for the East, and it's not a one size fits all for everything.
Right. Right. Well, it's probably hard to sell some of these foliar products that BW has in Iowa because everyone goes to the lake for 3 months after they spill their bag of corn and still come back and
Sure.
harvest 300 bushel,
Yeah.
right?
I
That's really what we think
yeah.
about Iowa, by the way, out
Well,
west.
and
But
I say this not to be snoot about it, but the reality is my home farm. I mean, we could trip over 200 bushel corn really easily, and there's a reason why people go to the lake. There's a reason why my folks go to Arizona for the winter. Is the reality that there's nothing else to do during the winter. Here, we're planting for 6 months plus out of the year. We're harvesting for the same amount, like in various ways. We have to have a lot of things go right here in order for us to get a crop. Not just a crop, but to get a good crop.
right. No, that's very true, and we see it on a local level as well. Kind of the difference between the guys that farm in those really low CEC soils where they're managing water and nitrogen applications a lot more intensively versus the guys in the 20 CEC plus soils that are able to apply a little more nitrogen up front and have a little bit more of a wiggle room or grace period with water and keeping ahead of our 100-degree days, and you get a pivot to break down. And I mean, you have a lot more challenges in not just out west, but even here out west, based on soil type too. So it really forces us, in my opinion, which I am biased, but it really forces us to be better farmers, I think. And there's a lot of different tools that I think get brought from the east, from maybe from a company that's developing a product, or even you look at Infro or Starter Fertilizer on a planter, and it's like the West is usually the guinea pigs. It seems like we're the first to adopt because we're in such a challenging area. We're forced to look at other ways to maximize our efficiency on an acre. So I have a lot of respect for the West, in West, and I don't know where you really draw that line. Probably where you stop getting 20 inches of annual rainfall. But there's a big difference in soil, but also a big difference in that rainfall piece that really influences, I guess, how willing guys are to look at new innovative products. And now, obviously, as we talk about the differences in East and West, I mean, one of the big things that always comes up for me is stress on that plant. Sure. So you've got obviously different kinds of stress, but I know that's one thing that's really intrigued me with a couple of BW Fusion's products. So why don't you go into a little bit how, we can use biology and hormones to help mitigate some of the stress our
Yeah.
plants have to
Yeah,
experience.
it's a great question, but it's also, as we look at it, every day of that crop's life locally here in Colorado, it's stressed in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't come out of the ground in glorious conditions and an opportunity just to bask in the sunlight. It is a different type of stress. One thing we all share across, whether you're in the east or you're in the west, is we all share an herbicide application and an opportunity that we need to control weeds, and so we have herbicide stress, but we also compound things with different kinds of stress, from drought stress to heat stress. Um, those pieces of the puzzle, while they affect the crop in different ways and at different times, are different out west than they are in the east. But herbicide stress is really the key driver that we can commonly share from east to west and north to south with it. But when we look at stress, we look at it from the standpoint of that, if I may use an illustration or example here, is we look at stress as saying that plant is something's happening within that plant that impacts the sugar production from that plant. If we look at it from photosynthesis standpoint, we've got to take in sunlight. That sunlight creates sugars, of which that feed that plant throughout its life cycle, and hopefully continue to feed it well into that reproductive stage, which we don't, and hopefully don't have some early senescence. But that sugar is a currency, and every day that plant takes in sunlight, that plant takes in moisture and nutrition, it's going to create sugars, of which those sugars are going to then feed the soil, with the things that are in the soil, and that's what's in the soil is going to then in turn feed the plant. And so when we look at that symbiotic relationship between plant and soil, sugar becomes the currency that allows that corn plant to really thrive or struggle in its environment. Now, there are a whole bunch of external factors that go into that, from a management practice standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. But sugar being currency, if you think about it, is when if we share herbicide stress, and stress that being the key provider here, when that herbicide, when that sprayer goes across the field, it hits everything that's in that field, weed or plant. And yes, those plants are tolerant to what we're putting out there, but in every case, it has to metabolize that herbicide. And when it metabolizes that herbicide, it causes that plant to throw up some defense mechanisms and say, hey, I need to defend myself. There's something happening here. No different than you or I stub our toe. Like, holy smokes, we've got to do something different in order to not get a negative result. That first thing to go with that is that plant shuts those stomates down, which then limits our photosynthesis, which then limits our sugar production. And that sugar is that currency that keeps the whole cycle going. If that plant shuts down for 48 hours, 72 hours, and in some cases, depending on what we're throwing out there, it could be 10 plus days that it takes that plant to get back to its regular sugar production. And when that's the case, we've limited our top end potential. Yes, we've killed the weed. That was our intended purpose at it. But the reality is that we've limited our upside potential because we've limited the amount of sugar production that plant provides.
It's time for a crop nutrition plan that gets more return from every drop. Starting with Pro Germinator from AgroLiquid, a complete phosphorus fertilizer product that includes nitrogen, potassium, and iron. More than 30 years of research shows that lower application rates of Pro Germinator often outperform other sources of fertilizer. With AgroLiquid's Pro Germinator, you can apply less and expect more. Find out more at agroliquid.com.
We've kind of made our soil chemically dependent. And I would agree we have. But I think there's a lot of guys out there that would argue, yeah, we've made it chemically dependent, but we've done it very successfully. Sure. You look at what we've been able to do as a nation globally even. We have too many acres of corn. That's why everyone in Iowa needs to plant beans. So the corn price is a little better for out here in Colorado.
Fair
But,
statement.
you look
Sure.
at that globally, though, and we have very successfully gotten a return consistently from adding more nitrogen, adding more phosphorus. Maybe we're starting to tail off of that in the last 10 to 15 years. I think we've kind of peaked out on that. Now we're getting into that verge of seeing that diminishing returns of more nitrogen, more synthetic nitrogen, more synthetic phosphorus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wouldn't argue with that at any point, because I think, but I'll go back to your previous point of, is in the West, we know that we need to adapt in order to do it better and to continually get over that plateau, that proverbial plateau. In the East, sometimes we get, and it's no disrespect to anything that happens in the East, it's just a different growing environment. 20 plus inches of rain changes a trajectory of my mood and my expectation of return on using some products. And the reality is, it's just a different it's a different way of thinking, but it's also a different way of adapting. We have to adapt to survive here. We can't just continue to be the same archaic way of thinking. In the East, when we start to have some flexibility in that latitude in those growing environments and the different things that Mother Nature gives us, we have some ability to do things a little bit differently, and maybe not. I don't want to say not take it as serious, but in some cases, we just don't have to work as hard. And here we have to work a lot harder in order to get the desired outcome that we want.
A big part of that difference, I think, has to do with organic matter. And what are some ways BW Fusion has found that we can actually help, in lower organic matter soils? How can we not necessarily help increase that? Everyone wants to talk about increasing organic matter, and what I've seen is, one, it's very hard and expensive to do, but it takes a long time too. So let's not be a next year man here, or a 10-year down the road when I get my organic matter built up 0.5%. How can we make our 1% organic matter tough, sandy, loam soil to do more for me?
And it really comes down to analyzing that soil and understanding nutrient cycling. If we get if we can allow that soil to cycle more often, we begin to build better output from our crop standpoint, but we also begin to build better structure from a soil-based standpoint. So in some cases, that soil, and to your point, I mean, we're trying to take a 1% organic soil and to make it work and be as efficient as a 3% organic matter soil. And we can do that through the biology component. And this biological, it's not a matter of if they work, it's a matter of when do they work. And they work when we put them in the environment to succeed. And in a lot of ways, that's allowing us, it opens us the door to begin to think about things a little bit differently, and begin to think about things of what's happening below ground, because I got to build roots before I build shoots. And if I have a good structure below ground and my soil cycles and functions high in a highly working environment, then I begin to reap the rewards of what that does in that relationship between soil and plant and soil.
What have you guys seen in assisting that process, or I guess within the plant? You talked earlier about how much sugar, in that plant's working hard through photosynthesis to, at the end of the day, we're wanting that sugar to, yes, be released into the soil, but what's kept in the plant, we're wanting to pack that into a kernel. We get into these reproductive stages. A lot of that plant's energy goes to converting nitrogen, right? Because we've talked about this a lot, especially, with our conversations with Pivot Bio specifically, is it's a big deal when you can supply to the plant and skip a process within that plant from converting that nitrogen to actually get it into a usable form to convert into amino acid and ultimately end up in a kernel in the form of starch, so that we actually have yield, because that's what we're paid on. We're not paid on how green our leaves look. We're not paid on, how tall and pretty our corn looks. At the end of the day, it's all about green. And I guess what have you guys seen kind of in that nitrogen process? Next Gen Fertilizers is introducing Seedlink, the game-changing planter box product that's revolutionizing corn planter box products. Seedlink delivers uniform emergence like never before, so every seed gets the perfect start. It's packed with phosphorus, humic and fulvic acids, amino acids, and beneficial biology. And the best part, Seedlink is half the cost of most of the other competitive products, even with more in it. We're not just applying biology here, we're actually applying biology with a food source. Use Seedlink on your corn today and get better emergence, better results, and all for a better price.
So, I mean, ultimately, you're absolutely right. Like the reality is that corn plant needs different forms of nitrogen at different phases of its life cycle. And at the end of the day, it takes a considerable amount of energy to move it from nitrate to ammonium to all the way to aminos of acids of being able to be utilized in a form in that plant. And at every moment of that piece is understanding how long that process takes, how much energy that process takes. And when we get to the latter end of that life cycle, that plant, I mean, it's no different than us as humans, right? I mean, we get to the latter of our life cycle. We don't want to work as hard in order to convert things into energy for us. We want to hit the easy button. And so from our standpoint at BW, we've recognized that one of the biggest things that we have, or concerns that we have late season, is clogging up the flow of nutrients into that plant. And that really starts with the nitrate buildup in the bottom of that plant, where if we have nitrate where it takes a significant amount of energy in order to convert that into amino acids, and there's multiple steps to get there, we reduce our grain fill period. We reduce the impact that we can have by prolonging that life cycle and that early senescence. If we can reduce that nitrates, we have a product in our portfolio called amino, of which that I call it the plumber. It's the reality that it has to work inside that plant to reduce the nitrate levels in that plant, but also provide the amino acids the easy button in order to convert energy into useful pieces, which helps us with grain fill, test weights, keeping that plant alive longer, that it greener, so that takes that photosynthesis, turns that into energy, that sugar production stays high. When nitrate builds up in the bottom of that plant, it is really hard for anything to go up and down and move in that plant. And so if we can use the plumber and unclog that piece, we now begin to continue to have that flow of nutrient and uptake. Nitrogen being the most particular piece of that, and giving it in the amino form is great. But when we start to look at cobalt as a key indicator of building that and getting that easy button in order to make sure that plant has what it needs to keep those nitrate levels low, that's where we find that we bring a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak. In the reality, we do a lot of work. You've done it with Pivot and the pieces. We've done it over the years, and understanding that we've got to do more with less. Now, and it's maybe not more with less, but how are we more efficient with not just more efficient with our fertilizer spend, but more efficient with our dollar. And they just do go hand in hand, I think. And sometimes you have to leave a little bit of, as a farmer, you have to leave a little bit of the budget, money left in the budget at the end, to make sure that we finish strong. No runner finishes a race and pulls up before the finish line. And we don't want that crop to do the same thing. But I think sometimes when it hits that end of August, beginning of September, we're spent cash wise, we're spent emotionally, we're spent, we're just really taxed in order to get it out of the field at that point in time. And growers forget about that last aspect of staying viable and staying alive and building to that finish line. And I think ultimately it's you had hit the nail on the head at the very beginning of this. The reality that maybe not a lot of people understand or know what's happening with VW or what our position is in the marketplace. But I think gives us an opportunity, and this isn't an infomercial for VW. It's just a reality that working with people like you gives us the platform to say to showcase what we're doing, and you got to believe in it. You got to put it through the ringers and in the testing process, and that's what we're doing. And you and I have done this for a long time, and understanding that that's the starting point. And yes, we have the end goal in mind, but the reality is we've got to prove ourselves first. And I think we're in that space that is really exciting, because I think, if I'm a little bit biased at this point, I think we're at that tipping point to really give us that we tip into the favorable mainstream space here in your local region.
Yeah. Well, we are definitely living proof that people work with people. I don't know that I would have worked with BW Fusion. Oh, I guess I was already in discussions of maybe tiptoeing into the water a little bit, but I have a lot of respect for you, Matt, and I don't know how many of my customers you've met over the years with your time at both at Pivot Bio and BW, but it's I really value in you not just your expertise, because I think it's really easy to regurgitate marketing terms in today's world. But I do believe that you're very honest, and you understand the end goal is to prosper the farmer. At the end of the day, if BW makes a lot of money selling products and the farmer is losing money, really it's a lose-lose at that point. You've got to continue to innovate and have good products that work consistently to have a good business. And that's something that a lot of these other, kind of the fly-by-night companies, I think, give biologicals and plant stimulants and plant growth promoter products kind of a bad name. Sure. So I appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate what BW is doing as well. I think I always admire, and maybe it's because it's kind of my method of selling too, is like explaining. It's that education piece. It's the agronomic. It's the proving. It's the research. And I use that to sell. Really, it's like I don't like selling. I don't want to have to like come convince you why you should buy this newest, greatest product. If I don't believe in it, first of all, I'm not going to do it. And I know you're the same way. And I've seen you that with the middle company you were at, the stop. It's like I could tell there was some hesitancy there. And I think, I guess I just appreciate that about you, is that I feel like you're honest, you're genuine, and you really do want to provide an excellent product. And I'm hoping we can continue to work together, because I'm very excited about several of your guys' product that I think, when it comes to stress mitigation, are a very good fit in the West.
Yeah, likewise.
Because like you said, we have a lot of stress.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All the things you're doing. This is a fun and exciting space to be in, and a fun and exciting time. And you have the right partners. It makes it all the better.
All right. Well, I did just want to let you know, going to be putting gonna post a job here in the next month. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you on board. But yes, he's just laughing. He knows I can't afford him. But
I think we work well together in our respective spaces. So yeah, good stuff. This is such a great opportunity for all of us, because to your point, we've got to find ourselves getting over the hump and getting into the next space, and we have to do it. We have to work a lot harder out here than what our counterparts do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and as always, all our podcasts are on our website, so you can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and if you have any questions on anything you heard today, please reach out. I love it when I know people actually listen to the podcast, more people other than just my mom.
Fair enough.
So thanks, Matt.